It's no secret that no other superhero has been portrayed by as many different actors in live action as Batman. Some actors have been praised more than others, but they've all had their impact on how the character has been perceived in pop culture and have affected his mythos in some way, shape, or form. There has been a wide range of reactions from both comic book purists and casual fans to the casting news of who would be the next actor to don the cape and cowl. Since the late 1980s, there's been a reoccurring pattern of fans initially taking issue with the casting of an actor for a Batman related character, or even the character himself, only to later praise the performance once they get to see the full picture. So what are some of the most infamous examples of this transpiring over the decades, as well as any negative reception to performances that might not have jived well with audiences? The first notable instance transpired during the development of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie. Warner Brothers was gearing up to produce another Batman movie that would embrace the darker roots of the character after the 60s show. The producers suggested to Tim Burton that the role be played by Michael Keaton, after having screened Beetlejuice and being impressed by Keaton's performance. At the time, Keaton was primarily known as a comedic actor, having starred in films like Night Shift and Mr. Mom. Before his acting career took off, he would perform stand-ups at comedy clubs. Summer 1988 was when the news broke that Michael Keaton would star as the next Batman, while he was filming the comedy The Dream Team. This sparked massive controversy due to people believing that casting a comedic actor meant that the creatives weren't going to take the character seriously. Many comic fans were worried and assumed that WB was aiming to make fun of Batman and that Keaton was too slim or too short for the role. It was so wild that over 50,000 letters of protest were sent to WB offices, and the manager of a comic shop got 1,200 of his customers to sign a petition to denounce Keaton as Batman. Even Bob Kane at the time had his reservations with the casting decision, which prompted WB executives to arrange a private screening of the movie Clean and Sober for him to prove that Keaton was capable of performing in non-comedic roles. Despite the backlash, Michael Keaton saw it as a motivator and a challenge to prove that he could nail it. Pretty much everybody decided to shut their trap after the release of the first trailer, giving fans a glimpse of Jack Nicholson's Joker and Michael Keaton's Batman. Critics and audiences highly regarded Keaton, engrossing viewers in a darker take that hadn't really been attempted to that extent on the big screen. After the release of Batman Returns, parents complained that the movie was too dark and inappropriate for children despite its PG-13 rating. Tim Burton could sense that the studio wanted to go in a different direction with the Batman franchise and not have him return to direct. The studio hired Joel Schumacher to direct the next entry, with Burton taking on a producer role. Michael Keaton decided not to return due to creative differences and what he felt was a lack of involvement and inclusion in the development process. WB created a short list of potential actors to play the character, which included Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell, and Billy Baldwin. Val Kilmer was cast as Batman in Batman Forever as he was Schumacher's first choice, who felt Kilmer would make a great Batman and Bruce Wayne after seeing his performance in Tombstone. After Val Kilmer opted not to return for the second Joel Schumacher directed Batman film due to scheduling conflicts and contract negotiations, Schumacher approached George Clooney after witnessing his performance in 1996's From Dusk Till Dawn, believing he had the necessary looks, talent, and charisma. Batman and Robin was met with overwhelming negative reception, and the common consensus from critics in regard to George Clooney's performance was that it was very bland and uninteresting, while performances like Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy stole the show. The movie was nominated for 11 Golden Raspberry Awards, which was more than any other movie in 1997, with actress Alicia Silverstone, who played Batgirl, winning Worst Supporting Actress. George Clooney has been very vocal over the years about his performance and the overall reception to Batman and Robin.
Didn't you apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin?
I always apologize for Batman. I actually thought I destroyed the franchise until they brought it back. You know, somebody else brought it back years later.
It's so bad that it actually hurts to watch. It's physically and the truth of the matter is I was bad in it. And, you know, it's Akiva Goldsman, who's won the Oscar for writing since then. He wrote the screenplay. It's a terrible screenplay. He'll tell you. We all sort of go, yeah, we all whiffed on that one.
8 years later, in 2005, Batman Begins debuted as a reboot of the Batman franchise directed by Christopher Nolan. This new portrayal not only brought the character back to his darker roots, but also placed his mythos in a less fantastical setting. Heath Ledger had his agent contact Christopher Nolan once he found out the Joker was going to be the villain in the sequel to Batman Begins, and wanted to share his ideas on how he'd play the part. Before the script was even finalized, Nolan and Ledger both seemed to share a mutual understanding of how to tackle the character, with the Joker centered on the threat of anarchy and reveling in spreading chaos and fear on a large scale. Ledger went out of his way to spend a month alone in a hotel room developing the Joker, focusing on perfecting things like his voice and the laugh. In 2006, Warner Brothers officially announced that Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker in The Dark Knight. The reactions online were mostly negative, with many believing that Ledger didn't have the necessary acting chops to play a character like the Joker. Some had trouble seeing him in the role because of his performance in the Western romance movie Brokeback Mountain. Prior to The Dark Knight, romances and comedies played a large part in his filmography. Most reviews of The Dark Knight ended up praising Ledger's performance as the standout of the movie, highlighting his unpredictable and terrifying presence. Ledger ended up winning an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and became the second performer to win an Academy Award after death. After the Nolan trilogy concluded, WB was eager to get their own cinematic universe up and running after the release of Man of Steel. The sequel was announced to focus on the first encounter between Batman and Superman. Zack Snyder approached Ben Affleck to play Batman as he wanted an actor who could invoke an interesting counterbalance to Henry Cavill's Superman, a layered interpretation who was older and more experienced than Clark Kent while also retaining the charm of Bruce Wayne. Ben Affleck would become the oldest actor to play Bruce Wayne in a live-action feature film, being 43 years old by the time Batman vs Superman released in theaters. There was a vocal subset of people on the internet that were disgruntled with the casting choice, to say the least. They were straight up flaming this dude on Twitter in 2013. Ben Affleck officially cast as Batman in the Man of Steel sequel. For the first time in history, I kind of want Superman to win. You read for a part, you feel good about it, you feel confident. Then they cast Ben Affleck. Casting Ben Affleck as Batman sounds like something the Joker would do to create a distraction at the nerd bank. In the Ben Affleck version, Batman's parents off themselves.
All right, this is getting hurtful.
No, hey.
In August 2013, a social media sentiment analysis firm reported that 71% of tweets about the casting news in the first hour were negative. Some fans went as far as creating a petition on the White House website asking the Obama administration to denounce Ben Affleck as Batman before it was quickly taken down. This is genuinely the funniest piece of information I've come across while doing research for a video. What did they think Obama was gonna do? A petition on change.org urging Warner Brothers to remove Ben Affleck as Batman gathered more than 96,000 signatures, stating that his acting abilities weren't suited for a role like Batman and he wouldn't be intimidating enough. About that. While BVS wasn't well received by critics and audiences, Ben Affleck's performance as the Caped Crusader proved to be one of the standouts of that movie for a lot of people. There was much to explore and a lot of untapped potential with this Batman, who never received a solo film to fully develop his character and mythos. Ben Affleck was supposed to write, direct, and star in his own Batman movie set in the DCEU, which became one of the many cancelled or scrapped projects during that era. The movie had a working title of The Batman. In 2017, it was announced that Affleck would step down as director but was still on board to star and produce the movie. He stated that his time on Justice League was a bad experience due to the things that were going on in his life, such as his divorce and the extensive reshoots of that movie, making him feel as if he would be very unhappy if he were to direct. In February 2017, Warner Brothers executives announced that Matt Reeves would take over as director of The Batman. Matt Reeves created a new screenplay that focused on a younger Batman, and it was uncertain whether Ben Affleck would remain in the role. Ben Affleck in 2019 officially announced that he would step away from the role in the DCEU entirely.
I tried to direct a version of it and worked with a really good screenwriter, but just kind of couldn't come up with a version that couldn't crack it. No time to let someone else take a shot at it.
Is there anything you want to say, any official statement you would like to make?
I'm not Batman.
This gave Matt Reeves full creative control over the project, starting over from scratch and creating a new script with Peter Craig and Mattson Tomlin. Reeves wanted his vision of the character to be outside of the DCEU and set in its own continuity centered on a Year 2 Batman, telling more of a detective noir tale from Batman's perspective. According to Reeves himself, he wrote the script with Robert Pattinson playing the character in mind.
When I was writing, I was thinking of Rob. So this is all about a guy coping with something that he can never fix. So this guy's got tremendous control issues. So then somebody said to me, you should watch Good Time. And when I watched Good Time, I was like, I think that's the only person I could imagine as this Batman.
Wow.
Summer 2019 was when it was officially announced that Robert Pattinson would be the next Batman. Much of the backlash stemmed from his role in the Twilight movies, with many people unaware of his work after that series ended, although the reception wasn't anywhere near as vitriolic when compared to the initial responses to Michael Keaton or Ben Affleck. I was like 13 turning 14 when the casting announcement was first unveiled, and despite having never fully watched Twilight or any of his work at the time, I was under the impression that it wouldn't be a good casting choice under no basis whatsoever. Pattinson was highly praised for his performance in The Batman. Reviewers noted how well the character's emotions were conveyed through subtle movements and expressive eyes, bringing a sense of vulnerability in a way that hadn't really been done before on the big screen. Mr. Pattinson, I owe you an apology. I wasn't familiar with your game.
I'm sorry, I owe you an apology. I got on TV and said you will not go 20 for 25 again. You messed around and went 14 for 18, 3 of the 4. So, sir, I apologize. Love the way you're playing. And again, now we have a series.
Even though history has repeatedly shown that actors often face initial backlash only to have their performances praised once a project is released, I'm confident the same thing that happened to Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, and Robert Pattinson will happen to whoever is eventually cast as the DCU Batman. Now, I'm not saying there can't be criticisms or bits of skepticism here and there. It's not like every single actor to play Bruce Wayne in live action was the right pick, but most of the outcry is going to stem from people who are only vaguely or aren't at all familiar with an actor's work and don't have any actual good reasons to complain. It's ironic how this tends to happen to Batman the most, despite the fact that there have been more actors to play the role than other heroes like Superman or Spider-Man. So you'd think there'd be an established expectation of not to freak out over a casting announcement. All we can do is just sit back and wait for the inevitable switch up to unfold, from hating on whoever James Gunn approves to praising the actor's efforts.